Right now I am in the Turkish city of Hopa, which is on the Black Sea coast and around 10 kilometers or 6 miles away from the border with Georgia. And in a couple of hours I am about to try to cross that border and get to Georgia. So I want to make a video about how do you cross a border, because this has been something that I've been doing for the last 5 to 10 years extensively. And when I started, I had no idea what to do. I'd get nervous, like panic right before I crossed the border. But at this point, I'm pretty used to do it, and I feel like I have a lot of good information to share with other people who are planning on doing the same as travelers. This video is going to be split up into 2 different parts. So first thing, I'm going to list out a bunch of things that will help you prepare for not just crossing the border, but also being ready when you get to a new country on the other side of the border. And in the second part, I'm going to actually document, to the extent I can with my phone, the process of crossing a border. So without further ado, let's get into it, because there's a lot of information that I want to cover in this video. Before I get started with the list, I just want to say that I'm writing all these pointers out in a Medium article that will be linked in the video description and in the comments. And if there are things that are important that I'm forgetting now and I remember later, I will add them to the video description and to that article so you can go check them out later. So I'm splitting up this list of things you want to do into 2 parts. The first part is things you might need to deal with immigration and customs directly at the border itself. And the second part is things you should have ready, or ideally you should have ready, to be prepared to be on the other side once you cross the border. So border crossings can be easy or hard depending on what kind of passport you have. And if you have like a German passport or a South Korean or even an American one, you're probably not gonna have a lot of trouble. So you might not necessarily need all these things, but it's still good to have. Now if you have a passport like me, like a South Asian or like a Sub-Saharan African, like a Bangladeshi passport in my case, then I would say have all these things ready, because people like us have extra trouble when crossing the border, and having everything ready just makes the process a lot easier. So the first thing you're gonna need is a refundable flight booking, which is to prove that you are indeed leaving the country or have plans of leaving the country if you're visiting as a tourist. I don't necessarily always want to book a flight before I get into a country, because I don't always know if I can get into a country, especially if I'm going to a country where it's visa on arrival and they might not let me in. So to fix that, what I like to do is I want to book a refundable flight from Expedia literally a few hours or like 10 hours before I attempt to do the border crossing. So in this case, I go there and book a flight from Tbilisi to Istanbul, let's say. The cool thing about booking a flight through Expedia is that they have a free cancellation policy for 24 hours for most flights, not all flights, to make sure this applies to your flight. If you see this flight I'm looking at from Tbilisi to Istanbul, it says like there's no fee to cancel within 24 hours of booking. So if I try to cross that border and they don't let me in, I can just come back to Turkey, cancel my flight, no prices paid. So you are not always gonna get this for every flight. Like sometimes they won't have that free cancellation fee. So in that case, what I like to do, especially when I was traveling in the Balkans, is that I just like to book a bus ticket out of the country for like 5 euros, 10 euros, 15 euros, whatever it is. So in case they ask for something, I can just show it to them. And even if I don't end up getting on that bus, I'm not wasting a lot of money. It's like 5 to 15 euros, so it's like not gonna put a huge dent in my pocket, but it's still good to have that extra bit of insurance to assure the border people that you are actually gonna get out of the country. You're not planning on staying for an indefinite amount in an illegal way. Next on the list, very related, is they might want to see where you're staying, where you're living. And for this, I like to use the Hostelworld app or whatever other app you want to use for hostels, because most of them, like Hostelworld or even Hotels.com, have like a refundable cancellation policy if you cancel like 1 or 2 days before you show up. So I like to book separate bookings. Like for the first one, I want to have a booking for when I get there for like the first 1 or 2 days. And then for the rest, even if I don't have exactly where I'm going planned, I want to pick, let's say, a capital city or like a city where I'm most likely to stay, and just get like a 12-day, 10-day refundable booking from Hostelworld. So same policy, like once I get in, if I'm not planning on staying there, I can cancel it. Like even if I don't get in, then I can just like come back to Turkey, cancel it, not lose a penny. Third on my list is proof of finances, which is not asked for often, but is something that a lot of embassies state on their website that this is something we might ask you for. The way they usually ask it, tell you to like show them your bank account on your phone. This has never happened to me, but I know other people who this has happened to. Number 4 is travel insurance. This is also something that some countries say they want, but usually they're not gonna check. Like, I've never been asked for this either, but it's also something that's good to have, especially like medical insurance for a country that you're traveling to. From a new country's perspective, they don't want to deal with your medical bills if you get in a skiing or snowboarding accident and you don't have insurance that covers the cost of expenses at that country. Number 5 is don't bring anything that you think they might charge customs on. So I'd recommend not bringing cigarettes or alcohol, and obviously not illegal substances, but like even out of the legal substances that are both legal in the country that you're coming from and the country that you're going to, it can be a little tricky. And it can be especially tricky in places that are developing countries, because from my personal experience and the experience from all other backpackers I know, in some countries, border guards are often looking for excuses to like ask you for fines and fees so they can, you know, make more money. And you don't want to give them any excuses. And I sort of saw this one time when I was crossing a border in the Balkans. This girl sitting next to me basically just had some cigarettes, and I'm pretty sure this is within the like amount of cigarettes that she was allowed to carry, but they basically try to hassle her and like try to make her pay some like weird customs fee for bringing like 2 packs of cigarettes. So these are things you can easily avoid. Like, no one's gonna try to charge you customs or fees on your clothes or your computer or your camera. But if you bring stuff like cigarettes and alcohol, that's a different story. It might get a little tricky, so I'd say just avoid bringing that unless you really have to. Alright, so number 6 is kind of an important one, especially if you're traveling via like land border. This is not that big of a deal if you're taking a flight, because I feel like once you cross a border on a plane, then you're kind of on yourself. You go to immigration by yourself and that's it. But if you're taking a bus across the countries, like who you're sitting next to, who you're standing next to, the borderline, these are things that people see. So they can associate you with the person with you, and if they do something wrong, they might like put you in trouble as well. So one thing I've really noticed is that a lot of backpackers tend to carry like illegal substances when they're crossing a border. A lot of these people are coming from Western Europe or California or America, where, you know, it's like legal to do certain substances that are illegal to do, let's say, in Eastern Europe. But they still like bring it with them, which is very illegal and will put you in a lot of trouble if you get caught with anything like that while crossing a border. Be careful with who you befriend. If like you're talking to someone who's also like a chill backpacker and you're about to cross the border together, you're like getting on the same bus or something, start small conversation and like make sure they're not carrying any shit that could get both of you into trouble, because that's the last thing you want to do when you're getting into a new country. The 7th one is kind of important for any sort of entering a new country, but especially important for crossing land borders, is that if you have any sort of medication, take the prescription with you as well. So for my case, I actually travel with like a pill box with my freaking vitamins in them. It's not just for international border crossings. Even when I'm taking a domestic flights, I've had people like pull out my bag and get suspicious and be like, oh, what's in this pill? And then I just had to like show them the container saying, yeah, this is the vitamin. But if I didn't, I feel like they would have like done extra checks to make sure if it was like a vitamin. Okay, number 8 is the concept of a drop wallet. So drop wallets are kind of necessary in some places, like Central America. It's really not necessary in Western Europe, America, Canada, probably Australia. A drop wallet is basically like a second wallet that you carry with you, on you, which doesn't have all your cash, if you're carrying a lot of cash. If you're carrying a lot of cash, you want to keep the main amount of money safe and hidden somewhere close to you, obviously, but not in your wallet. People near the border crossings are often trying to like make money from tourists in ways that they're not supposed to. And it's messed up, but it's something that you just have to deal with because that's the way things work in certain parts of the world. So if they see you with a lot of money, they might like try to come up with BS fines that make no sense to try to take your money. And the easiest way to avoid that is to not show them that you have a lot of money. I know for a fact that in Central America, like this is kind of important for like certain countries in Central America, not all of it. In Eastern Europe, I've never personally experienced it, but I do know like a friend of mine who had this happen to them. Like there was cash, and not gonna say the name of the country, but it's in the Balkans. And while he was leaving, the border guard was like, "Oh, you didn't get this permission from the police station, which he wasn't supposed to get. So like you're gonna have to pay a fine." And basically tried to harass him for a while. It didn't work. He ended up getting out without paying anything. But me personally, that's something I've definitely noticed. When they stop me and they're like screening me over and over again, which happens pretty often, they do ask, like, where is your money? And I always say, like, oh, I don't have any. I do have a little bit of backup money, but not on the wallet. But I say, like, oh, I don't have any. I'll just cross the border and I'll get it from an ATM, and I have a credit card. And they're like, at that point, if they want to get money from you in a way they're not supposed to, they're not going to follow you to an ATM to do that. So related to that same thing is, do have some money though. Because if things don't work out, let's say if you're on a bus to another country and like they don't let you in, then you're like stranded on the border, which is exactly what happened to me on the Albania-Kosovo border a few months ago. You definitely want to have enough money to like be able to get a taxi to a town where you can find more money or just like reach an ATM. So it's always good to have, I'd say, like $50 to $100 in cash. And I keep that in this file that I keep in my backpack that's always on me, which brings me on to the next point. Always keep your valuables in a backpack or a fanny pack and keep them close to you when you're crossing the border. Like sometimes when you're doing it by bus, you leave your main luggage in the bus. What I've seen a lot of people do is just leave everything in the bus, which makes no sense to me. So I keep all of my important stuff in one small backpack and I take it with me no matter where I go, because I feel like that's just the smartest thing to do. Even if you're in a safe country, you just don't want to leave your stuff lying around in a bus unattended. So this next point is especially relevant right now because we're still in a pandemic, but relevant in general. Check entry requirements in terms of vaccinations or what you need to enter the country. Now obviously now because of COVID, almost every country has somewhat strict rules about like PCR tests and vaccinations when you're entering the country. A lot of African countries, they had requirements for getting like a yellow fever vaccine and other vaccines way before COVID. So these are things you want to check to make sure that you don't come up with any surprises when you're about to cross the border. For example, for today, I know I have to show proof of vaccination when I'm crossing the border. So I already like printed out all that stuff in Istanbul before I even came to this part of Turkey, just to make sure there aren't any hiccups if my phone dies or if something weird happens. So this last point I feel like is important if you're coming from a country like mine, like Bangladesh, like South Asia, Africa, but not so important probably if you're coming from Germany. If you're going somewhere to travel, like when you're crossing immigration, you want to look like a traveler. You want to look like a tourist. You want to look like someone who's going to be there for a few days to take pictures and like spend money at their country because that's why they want you there. What you don't want to look like is someone with like torn up clothes who's gonna like potentially stay there longer than you're supposed to. So when I cross a border, I definitely wear my best clothes, whatever they are, like wear my smartwatch just to make it look like, yeah, I'm a traveler, I'm gonna go into your country, I'm gonna spend money, and I'm gonna leave, and I'm gonna keep traveling after that. So now that we're done with what you need to do to prepare to like cross immigration customs, let's move to the next part, which is how do you prepare for what you'll do once you cross that border and you are in a new country? You're not gonna have, most likely, a SIM card that's gonna work. So you can't just Google stuff once you're there. You're not gonna most probably have money from that country unless you like did that through a currency exchange, which I don't think is always the best idea because you get like the worst rates when you do it from another country. So how do you prepare? The first thing I'd say is just Google wherever you're trying to go, the exact route. And I swear you're gonna find like 3 or 4 articles, like no matter where in the world you are, of someone who has like exactly done that and just decided to write like a big blog post about it. On like, this is where you go, this is where you get the ATM, this is how much the bus costs to the next city, this is how much the bus costs to this city. And just like having that on your phone, downloaded a blog post like that can go a long way. And that's what I'm doing today. I found a pretty helpful blog post going from Hopa to Batumi, which is the city on the other side of Georgia, and I'm gonna follow that religiously to the extent I can to cross over. Now beyond that, what you also wanna do is download Google Maps and download offline maps so you have the offline data for whatever place you're going to. If you don't know, like I didn't know until 2016, you don't actually need a SIM card or internet to navigate Google Maps if you have GPS on your phone, and every like smartphone has that in the world right now. So if you download the maps beforehand, using offline maps, then you can just like navigate your way around a city and find ATMs or restaurants or what you need to nearby. Certain things won't be available, like public transit information. You need internet for that. But if you're trying to like get somewhere and just trying to figure out where the closest ATM is, where the closest bathroom is, where the closest hotel is, that's good stuff to have. So what I usually like to do is, let's say I'm going to the city of Batumi. If you click on the city, like one of the things you see is like download. So you can click on that. So you can click on that. It like shows you what area do you want to download. You can like make it bigger or smaller, and then like just get the whole region, like as much as you might possibly need, and download that information. and that'll be on your phone until you delete it or until it expires a couple of months later. Related to that, what you also want to do is, if you're planning on taking like public transit inside a city to get from one place to another, which is, let's say, something that I'll be doing in 1 or 2 days, hopefully, when I get to Tbilisi, the capital, I want to figure out how to get from the main bus station to my hostel that I'll be staying at. So in this case, you want to type that out in advance. Let's see, Fabrica Hostel. There you go. So in this case, I'm trying to go to my hostel, which is Fabrica Hostel in Tbilisi, and I'm probably gonna get to Tbilisi by train, so I wanna see how can I get there by public transit. And the public transit info, like what buses and trains you need to take, even if your Google Maps is downloaded, they can't figure it out. They need like live information from the internet. So what you wanna do is look that up on Google Maps, and when I look at it, they tell me like, okay, these are the buses that go there. And what I really like to do is like pick a route that I think is gonna work at the time when I get there, and just take like screenshots of it. The second one is also very, very important in a lot of places. Not so much probably in the Netherlands or, you know, places where they speak English, but it's very important in places like Turkey or Albania, where it's unlikely that a lot of people are gonna speak good enough English to you. What you wanna do is go to Google Translate, pick the languages that you're most likely to use. In my case, you can see I have Turkish, Georgian, and Spanish downloaded because these are languages that I seem to need the most. And if you have these downloaded, then you don't need, again, internet to translate something that you're saying to someone. So if you meet someone who doesn't speak the language, which I'm very likely to do in the next couple of days in Georgia, I do have the language Georgian downloaded, so I can just go like translate from English to Georgian. So I can just ask them something simple like, where is the bus? And then they'll just show it to me in the local language that I can show to someone. They can be like, oh yeah, go there or whatever. And if they want to say something, just reverse it and like give the phone to them and they can type it out, and it works pretty easily. So Google Translate's a lifesaver. I cannot recommend it enough. Just like download the language of the country before you get there. On a final note, I'd say like, it's always good when you're making a journey like this into a place where you're not gonna have a SIM card or a lot of cash getting in, is to just let someone know, like one of your best friends, your family, whoever that is, that you're doing this. So in case something goes wrong, in case you get stranded somewhere, people know where to look for you. For me, I just tell my mom before I do something like this every time. For you, it could be, I don't know, whoever you trust the most with being responsible in case you go missing for like 48 hours. So they can like notify the police or try to find out what exactly happened if you're in trouble and can't, you know, reach out to anyone. But I've never had the need for this, actually. You know, like it's very unlikely that something like this will happen, especially in Turkey and Georgia. But it's just good to have. It's just good to have that like backup, someone looking after you. Now, in a couple of hours, I'm just gonna check out and try to record the whole process and see if I can actually get into Georgia. So I don't know if I can get into Georgia because Bangladeshi citizens usually need a specific visa for Georgia, which I don't have. We can bypass that requirement if we have a valid visa from a lot of other countries like the US. And I do have a visa from the US, but I'm not 100% sure if it's still valid. So I guess I'll just go and find out. Let's do this. They like you. This dog is basically following us. Okay, so my main plan was to just leave the hotel, get on a minibus to cross the border. But I met some people. One of them I met last night is a guy from Germany named Lucas. Today I met this girl from Austria named Christina, and she has a car. And she just offered to basically drive me to the border and we'll figure it out from there. So that's what we're doing. Now we're really going to Georgia this time. Right, so we're right next to the exit point for Turkey, and then we just walk over and enter on the other side. Our friend is actually driving, so she's going in by her car herself, and the two of us, me and Lucas behind me, we're gonna go across by foot. Goodbye, Turkey. Bad way to leave. Changing our cash for the other side right now. Georgian currency. That was a fucking nightmare. I'm in Georgia. Taxi, go? No taxi. This bus going to... No bus. So this is how scams work. I walked out and everyone wanted to get me a taxi. And I was like, no, I'll just walk. They're like, oh, there's no buses. And then they're like, no, there's a bus right over here behind me. What's up? Congratulations. Yeah. Basically, they stopped me and asked me for every single thing that I was talking about earlier. So they checked my hotel reservations, they checked my return flight, they looked at every single page of my passport to like make sure I had the right visas, and they like pulled out this torchlight that I'd never seen just so they could like get better looks at everything that was on the passport. And then I was like waiting for an hour. Then I went to customs. This is the funniest part. I went to customs because I had a drone. They're like, oh, we're gonna check the drone, like the chief officer is gonna come, and then like he just came and was like, why do you have a drone? It's like, because I make videos. It's like, okay, just go. like, okay, I'll go. Pretty exhausted. I was gonna go to another city, the capital, Tbilisi today, but I really don't have the energy to do that anymore. I'll just get a hostel in Batumi in this coastal town, stay here and catch the train later. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you want to see more normal travel content from me, feel free to subscribe to my channel. And if you want real-time updates on where I am, feel free to follow me on Instagram. That's where I usually post real-time updates as stories. I'll catch you guys on the next video from somewhere in Georgia.